Right, in this video we will be discussing pronouns as well as words acts like a noun, but it stands in place of it. For example, I love my bike. I ride it all the time. But we use pronouns so that we don't sound overly repetitive, using the same noun again and again and again. For example, let's take a look at my definition of pronoun. I said a pronoun acts like a noun, but stands in place of it. It is a pronoun here. If I didn't use it, my definition would read, a pronoun acts like a noun, but stands in place of a noun. Well, that sounds kind of silly. So does I love my bike and I ride my bike all the time. We get it. You like your bike. We use it so that we don't keep repeating ourselves. Here is a list of pronouns. Most of the time, really, the best way to identify a pronoun is simply to memorize them. And that really isn't all too complicated, given that it kind of follows the same pattern for each type of person. So if you're talking about yourself, we've got I, me, my, myself. Similarly, if you're talking about another person that's a guy, he, him, his, himself. Another person that's a girl, she, her, hers, herself. You get the point. Now, it might seem strange to you that I, me, my, and myself are considered pronouns because that's all you ever call yourself. But in actuality, they are pronouns. If we didn't call ourselves I, me, my, myself, really what we'd be using is our name. Miss Galgano, Miss Galgano's, Miss Galgano herself. So these are pronouns, strangely enough. So when you see I, me, my, myself, just remember that those are in fact pronouns. So let's do a little practice. I have these couple of sentences here for you. Maria asked Joe how he feels now that he's single. He said, I'm not sweating it. Now I have time to hang with me, myself, and I. What I want you to do is underline all of the pronouns that you see in those couple of sentences. There are a handful. Pause the video now and then come back to check your work. All right, welcome back. Let's see if you were able to identify all of the pronouns. So we have Maria asked Joe how he feels. He is one of the pronouns. He is referring back to Joe. Otherwise it would read, Maria asked Joe how Joe feels, and that sounds silly. So we use he to act like the noun Joe, but to stand in place of it. Maria asked Joe how he feels now that he's single. Again, that he refers back to Joe. He said, so in other words, Joe said, quote, I'm not sweating it. So Joe uses I to stand for himself. Otherwise, it would say, Joe's not sweating it, and no one would say that. So I is the pronoun that we use to replace our own name. Not sweating it. It is a pronoun referring back to the fact that he is now single. Now Joe, now I have time to hang with me, myself, and I. Again, those me, myself, and I's are pronouns standing for Joe, Joe's self, and Joe. And that would be silly. Okay? So let's now move on to our next part of speech, which is the conjunction. A conjunction joins two words, phrases, or sentences together. So, for example, I love my bike, I ride it all the time. In order to join those two sentences together, we're going to use and as the conjunction. I love my bike and I ride it all the time. So in a way, pronouns and conjunctions kind of serve similar functions in our writing. It helps us from sounding too repetitive and too redundant. it would be really repetitive to keep having all of these short, choppy sentences in our writing. So sometimes we use conjunctions in order to combine sentences to give our writing a little bit more of a unique rhythm to spice things up a little bit. So here's a list of conjunctions. We've got coordinating conjunctions, which are sometimes called fanboys. And fanboys is an acronym standing for those conjunctions. So those conjunctions are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Again, we call them fanboys because F-A-N-B-O-Y-S, for, and, no, but, or, yet, so. We have these other conjunctions, though, that are a little bit more tricky. I don't have a mnemonic for you to remember them. They're called subordinating conjunctions. We'll talk more about them in the future. Here's a list of them here. It's best to memorize these. Let's do some practice. We are going to underline the conjunctions in the following sentences. Here's the example sentence. Even though I miss summer, it is nice to be back to school and to meet new people. So again, with conjunctions, really what you need to do is you need to memorize them. The fanboys conjunctions are easy because we have that nice acronym. So I'll look first for any of those fanboys. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And I see that I have one here, this and. So I'm going to go ahead and underline that. Now, though, I need to think about if I have any of the subordinating conjunctions, which were provided in this list here. And, in fact, I do. I have even though. So I'm going to underline even though as well. So I end up with even though underlined and oops, and should be underlined as well. Okay? So at this point, pause the video and do the other practice ones on your own. Come back to the video to check your work. All right, let's take a look at the next one. After coming home from school, my friends always want to play video games, but I make sure to finish my homework first. Let us see if we have any fanboys for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. We do. We have but here, so but is going to be underlined. We'll check our list for any of the subordinating conjunctions, and we see that we have one here, and that is after. So I'm going to underline after and but. Moving on, they make fun of me, but I would rather get good grades than hang out. But is that coordinating conjunction that will connect those sentences. All right, so that concludes our conjunctions and our pronouns. Next, move on to the following video in Schoology.